Shalom. Before I begin this lesson, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Ruach HaKodesh. I would like to say double honors to my teachers, the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone, the men whom I've learned this truth from, and Shalom and citations to the elect that's out there preaching His word of truth and sincerity. I'm the brother Shaquat, and I'm one of the brothers from the branch of Great Millstone, Montreal, back with another lesson. And this lesson that I'm going to be getting into today, um, it's going to be inspired based off something I saw on Instagram, and it was a Jake. It was a shootout between two Jakes, right? In a convenience store, man. I think it was. Uh, yeah, but that shootout, and shootouts in general between Jakes goes to show you how much we've fallen as a nation of people, right? We're falling bad because we hit the bottom of the bottom, man. The bottom of the barrel, right? Um, and that's not who we are supposed to be as a nation of people. We are, the sons of Yahweh, man. And Jake is short for Jacob, right? Who's Jacob? Jacob is the, forefather of the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel, right? And the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel, um, with today their modern terms, they'll be known as the so-called blacks, the Hispanics, and Native Americans. That's who makes up the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, and that's who the Lord's chosen people are, right? But being the Lord's chosen people, we are supposed to have a particular uh, kind of excellency to us. We are supposed to be excellent, right? But right now, that's not what we are, for the most part, and I'm talking about Jake's as a whole, right? Because we know that there's a remnant, there's a small bit of Israelites that would come back to the remembrance of who they are and try to do the right thing and try to live uh, how the Lord, the Heavenly Father Yahweh, intended us to live, right? Which is be above these other nations. So let me get this real quick. Jeremiah 2 and verse 21. Yet I have planted thee a noble vine, holy of thy seed. Right, so that's how the Lord intended the nation of Israel to be a noble vine, man. And I'm gonna look up that word noble to see what it gives me. Um, Aristocratic, noble born of noble birth, titled, patrician, blue blooded, high born, well born, gentle of gentle birth, humble, righteous, virtuous, good, honorable, honest, upright, upstanding, decent, worthy, uncorrupted. Right. That's what it is. That's what the word noble means. Right. To be excellent, royal. Right. Those are other words that you could tie in to being noble. But that's how the Lord intended us to be as a nation. Right. But we fell away, man. We lost our heritage, and we've been corrupted by Esau Edom, the so-called white man. Right. And he put a heritage on us that's not ours. That's actually his. Right. Because that violent nature, that bloody and murderous nature, it's not who we are as a people, man. It's not who we're supposed to be as a people. Right. You know. But that's actually Esau Edom, the so-called white man, because that's what he was created to be. That was his lot to fulfill. Right. So when we see these gangsters, killing each other, man, for the smallest reasons, or for reasons that are not even justifiable, which murder is not, you know, justified at all, right? It goes to show that how much we've fallen as a people, man. When we see that those sort of things going on, you know. Um, so let's go back. Jeremiah 2 and 21. Yet I've planted thee a noble vine, holy right seed. How then art thou turned into the degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me, right? So Jake has become degenerate and corrupted, right? You know, but that's not who we actually are, man, as a nation of people, right? You know, and you do have brothers that are in the truth now that we're in that lifestyle, that gangster lifestyle and gangs, and or playing the block or whatever you want to call it, right? But guess what? That's filth. That's corruption, and that gets washed away when you come into the truth, right? Because that's what the truth allows, or that's what the truth does, right? That's why it's known as water. That's why Yahweh Shai, or not Yahweh, in the Psalm, it says this. Psalms 119 and verse 9. Wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his ways? By taking heed thereto according to thy word, right? So that's how you cleanse your ways, man. That's how you clean your ways, clean your mind, is through the word of Yahweh Shema Shai. These words, man. That's how you clean filth. And a part of filth was us thinking that, that was that was how we're supposed to live life, prior to being in the truth. And that can really tie with whatever, you know, brothers are doing in the world, man. Because that's all filth. The only purity comes from this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man. So you really don't start living until you have this knowledge, right? That's why scriptures speak about the in the book of Revelation 11, Ezekiel 37, when it speaks about those dead bones, or their dead bodies. Meaning you're dead spiritually. You're dead. You're in a dead state of mind. Without this truth, that's what it is. You're pretty much dead. And in the world, you were dead because you didn't know right from wrong, left to right. You didn't know that, right? You know. But being in this truth, you start living life. That's why it's known as. That's why this wisdom is also known as the breath of life. Is wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So you really don't start living until you come into the truth, right? Um, Trying to find another. There's a precept. Uh, This is the book of Proverbs 21 and 16. The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. Right. So there you go. If you lack understanding, or in other words, if you don't have this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the scriptures of Yahweh Shema Shai, which I believe that the apostles and bishops of Great Most don't have. Right. If you don't have this, you're pretty much in the congregation of the dead. Right. You're pretty much dead. And even other Israelite groups that don't teach the 100% truth. They might um not teach particular things for whatever reason. They don't have 100%. You know, they're still pretty much dead. They're not fully alive because scriptures speak about the flesh, right? But they had no breath. There was flesh and bones and sinews upon them, but guess what? There was no breath in them. The understanding was still not there, right? And that flesh and sinews and bones could symbolize uh, having some form of the truth, having a bit of the truth. For example, knowing that you're an Israelite, knowing what the Heavenly Father looks like, knowing that you're the chosen people. But guess what? You don't have the full understanding, all right? You might, not have the understanding of the mark of the beast, not have the understanding of hell, that hell is not a real thing. Hell is symbolic, right? in the scriptures, um, depending on the context. Um, the virgin birth, there's no such thing as a virgin birth. In the name of the Lord, you might not have those things, man. And you're pretty much still dead. Because having the whole thing, having the full truth, having the full wisdom and understanding of the scriptures, that's the full breath. That's the breath. You know, and like I said, the apostles and bishops and elders, the great millstone, I believe, have that doctrine of Yahweh Shai. You know? So yeah, that video I was watching, man, that Jake, those two Jakes literally killing each other. And you know, one Jake had no mercy, man. No mercy because oh man, you know, he shot him. The guy was laying on the floor. You know, the guy was still shooting while he was laying on the floor, bleeding out. While the other guy ran out the store. But guess what? The guy that ran out the store came back, man. After the guy that was on the floor bleeding out threw his gun away, thinking he got away. He was good. You just have to wait for the ambulance. Nah, man. The other Jake came back, finished the job. Right? No mercy. But that's not who we're supposed to be, man. And that's why, call Allah Yahweh Shema Shai for giving me this wisdom and knowledge and understanding, because at some point, guess what? I thought that was cool to live like that. Obviously, being naive, no guidance, no father figure, raised by a mother, right? All those things contribute to the lack of understanding of what's right and wrong, man. But guess what? The Lord have mercy to give me this truth. So where you get to start over, I get to start over. Any brother that has this truth, that's pretty much what it is. You get to start over, man. Right? You get to start over. And do things the right way and live the right way, the way that the Lord intended you to live. Matter of fact, let me get this real quick in the book of Revelation. Matter of fact, let's go to Hosea. The book of Hosea 1 and verse 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, that place is America, there shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living power. Right? So here in the West, America, Canada, but specifically America, because that's where the focus is. Guess what? That knowledge of who we are has come back to the Israelites, man. Has come back to the so-called Black Hispanics and Native Americans for the most part. And I remember the elder Apostle Tahar a while back. He did a couple videos on, or something that he mentioned often was that there's a lot of over 1 million so-called Black Hispanics and Native American people that proclaim and call themselves Israelites, something along those lines, right? And that's not a coincidence. That's for a reason. Because the Lord has allowed His Spirit to rest on the earth, all right? And a part of that is prophecy, is prophetic. The fact that we will come back to the remembrance of who we are and stand boldly, upon our feet. All right? So, yeah, I'm going to close it off there. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. In closing, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach Once again, double honors to my teachers, the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. And shalom and salutations to the elect. Until next time, shalom.